afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rachel Rose Jackson from Corporate Accountability, and we're here today as members of the global campaign to demand climate justice to talk about a very important and critical debate that's playing out here in the halls at COP28 in Dubai. But first, I'd like to welcome our speakers. We have an incredible lineup today of powerful, amazing experts, activists, and leaders who are going to share their knowledge and experience with us today. We have Carol Montour from Indigenous Climate Action, Sylvia Ribeiro from ETC Group, Julia Bernal from Sandia Pueblo Action Alliance and a member of Indigenous Environmental Network, and Suparna Lahiri from Global Forest Coalition. We have a lot to talk about today, but before we do, I'd like to start by acknowledging why all of us are wearing white today. As you're probably all aware, just miles from here, genocide is playing out. And this is only one place in the whole world where human rights are not being acknowledged. This is actually very important to what's happening, and we're here standing in solidarity with human rights and all of those fighting for them around the world, as well as in solidarity with the people of Palestine. There is no climate justice without human rights, and there is no climate justice on occupied land. That being said, in addition to that, what we'll hear about today matters a lot. Just as what's happening in these halls really matters. It's all very technocratic. Sometimes it sounds like negotiators are speaking a different language. But what happens here, there's a lot at stake. And in terms of what's at stake, it's lives. Not just millions of them, but billions of them. And not just human lives, but every form of life that thrives on this planet. So when we say these lives are at stake, we mean that the outcomes that come out of COP28 in Dubai will either condemn those lives or help protect them. And the schemes that we will hear about from our speakers today are those sorts of schemes and sorts of false solutions that risk condemning those lives. These topics are also very relevant to what's playing out in every negotiating room and closed-door meeting here in Dubai, and especially about the debate on fossil fuels and the grand question of to abate or not to abate. You'll hear more from our speakers about why this fossil fuel COP is risking becoming the false solutions COP. And to hear more about why, and specifically the false solutions of carbon markets, I'm going to hand over to Carol.
Thank you, Rachel. Sego Sego Gwego, everyone. My name is Carol Montour. I am Mohawk Wolf Clan from 6 Nations of the Grand River Territory. I'm a member of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. My people and all other Indigenous people across the world have been fulfilling our original instructions to live in balance with nature and all of our relations since time immemorial. Although Indigenous people represent less than 5% of the world's population, we safeguard 80% of the world's biodiversity. This is because of our relationship with our lands and our role as stewards. Although our knowledge has been denied and devalued, we know that we are scientists. We carry generations of observational knowledge that has been passed down to us by our ancestors. As Indigenous people, we are the closest to the land. And because of this, when we see these negotiations and we see these parties claiming that they are urgently pursuing solutions to the climate crisis, while focusing solely on operationalizing carbon market mechanisms and scaling up their false solutions, such as hydrogen, carbon capture and storage, and carbon dioxide removals, we know that they are lying. Market-based trading systems, flexible mechanisms, emission trading systems, or any other carbon pricing schemes are not and will never be a real solution to climate change. And the reason that these are being pushed forward by these parties is to ensure the continuation of extraction and fossil fuel usage. And make no mistake, these polluters and these industries have zero intention of stopping their destruction. And this is why the discussions on climate change solutions have been hijacked. These mechanisms depend on growing emissions from fossil fuel. If there is no fossil fuel use in 10 years' time, there is no need for a carbon market mechanism. Furthermore, carbon markets or any carbon pricing that places a monetary value on emissions after they have already been released into the atmosphere, continuing the warming that we are seeing, are ineffective. And even more insidious than this, What this is doing is placing a monetary value on nature. They are placing a money value to the very air that we breathe. After 500 years of colonization, after all of the harm that has been inflicted on our lands through deforestation, through mining, through fracking, all of the harms that have been done to water, through the use of industry, through mega dams, they are now turning to the air and they are saying, how do we exploit this? And how can we exploit this and call it climate action? We cannot allow the business interests of polluters to shape the negotiations that are happening in this crucial moment in time, in the hottest year on record. We cannot allow carbon markets and false solutions to continue and to delay action and place this burden on future generations that my generation is already dealing with. And again, without these emissions from fossil fuels, there is no need for carbon market mechanisms. Capitalism, colonialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, these systems that have created climate change in the first place, they tell us that our land is not an entity, a living being that we are in relationship with. It is something to extract, it is something to profit from. But we know that the land, the air, the water are not something to be owned or bought or offset or traded. These are our relations. And we stay here as Indigenous people and we say, stand with us, stand with future generations, and say no to false solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol, for really putting in context for us why carbon markets are not the saving grace of the climate crisis and why they're actually the perpetuators of further carbon colonialism, not to mention they don't work. They're unproven to reduce emissions and they cause a lot of harm in the process. Next, we'll hear from Silvia Ribeiro to break down some more of these false solutions for us. Silvia.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Silvia Ribeiro from ETC Group, and I'm based in Mexico. And I wanted to tell a little bit about this, that on geoengineering techniques. Geoengineering is a way of manipulating the whole climate. And you probably haven't heard of geoengineering for long, maybe 2-3 years ago, never heard about it before. And suddenly, all over this particular conference, you will find a lot of carbon dioxide removal. That is another name for geoengineering, and other technologies that has been proposed. And one of the most promoted technology from very early is this called carbon capture and storage. And carbon capture and storage is a technology that the oil industry has had for decades, for over 50 years. And they haven't used it because it was too expensive, but it's a technology to extract more oil. It's a technology it was before called enhanced oil recovery, and still today, all the projects that are developed called CCS, they are for enhanced oil recovery. Not all, but about 85% or more. And this technology, they inject carbon dioxide in the soil, and that's why they say it's capturing carbon. It is to push up deep reserves that they couldn't access in any other way. So this is a way of having more oil exploration and exploitation, and call it a climate technology. So this is one of the technologies that we are been hearing here all over the place, that this is one of the technologies that will save us. So it's not only that market will save us, also this technology that in most of them are even non-existent. The CCS exists, but many of the others that are being proposed are not even in place. And let me say that of CCS today, with all the propaganda, if we take the official figures of the people promoting CCS, it doesn't even capture 0.1% of the whole emissions. So the technology is not there, and when it is there, it will serve more oil exploitation. So why do we want this technology? Besides that, there are a lot of new impacts that people don't even think about. You will need a lot of new pipelines, 3 times more pipelines that we have today for gas and oil. And that means that the impact of these pipelines will go over the same communities that are already suffering of oil industry impacts. There are also, these are dangerous pipelines. People only think, oh, carbon pipeline. They don't realize that this is highly toxic, and it has already been explosions around them. That also very little well known. So this is on carbon capture and storage, but the other technologies that we will hear here, for instance, direct air capture, just to mention these big fans to suck carbon out of the atmosphere, they are incredibly energy and water intensive. So they will be competing with the use of energy, either more oil or renewable or even nuclear is what they say. And so they will come together with a lot of other impacts also. And the last I will mention, like a general example, is that we have been hearing the past 2-3 years a lot about blue carbon. Suddenly, the ocean and marine systems are not anymore our oceans and seas and water for what we and all the living things needed. Suddenly they are blue carbon, and blue carbon is just because they are there to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. And for instance, just to give the most used example, which is massive cultivation of algae. I'm sure all of you at some point heard that algae is the future of climate. We will suck all the carbon with algae and it will be so incredible because they already exist there. Well, this is about massive monocultures of algae, in some cases transgenic algae, and that will create a lot of impact. So in the seas, in the natural ways of absorbing carbon for ecosystems in the seas, but also over coastal communities. So again, all these false solutions that are proposed as techno fixes that could bring to us rapid solution with technology, they also have a clear impact on communities. For instance, if algae cultivation is deployed at a level that really will have any effect on climate change, it will need to be over 63% of the coast. In this coast, they are not empty. There are a lot of communities, coastal communities that live there, that really know how to manage not only fisheries, but also all these ecosystems. So when all this that now is under the name removals, that is being discussed at Article 6.4 and other articles, is bound to fail, right? Because it's not even in place. It will take more energy than it really takes. And most important of everything, it doesn't go to the causes. So anyone can continue emitting because someone will suck it out from the atmosphere, someone or some technique. So this is a really giant destruction with a lot of impacts. And when all this fail, they are proposing to have solar geoengineering. We are amazed that even in this conference there are several events proposing already to use what they call solar geoengineering that could have enormous disruptive impacts on many countries even and many areas. And because of that, there is also here in this conference people proposing to have a treaty to stop solar geoengineering. It's called a non-use solar geoengineering agreement, and it's something we all would need to look at to protect us with new technology that is being imposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. It's always very startling to me when I hear you remind us that carbon capture and storage is not new. It's been along for a very long time. It sounds like this new super cool thing. And also it's not a solution, it's just a way to continue fossil fuel use. So thank you for summarizing it in a very powerful and easy to break down way for us. I'm now going to hand over to you, Julia, to speak a little bit more about yet more of the false solutions that we're seeing being promenaded in these halls.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Julia Bernal. I'm from San Diego Pueblo in the southwest region of the US. This region particularly has been heavily impacted by the fossil fuel industry, as well as a legacy of uranium mining operations and coal-fired plants. So there is an urgent region-wide conversation of the just transition, but a transition that will also appease fossil fuel and extractive interests. So I'm going to be talking about hydrogen energy production, transportation, storage, and use, which is being touted on the international level, federal, regional government level, to be a sustainable energy carrier for power generation, which includes load leveling of the region's increasing use of renewable energy, transportation, and industrial applications like refineries, ammonia production, steel production, cement production, brewing, and mining. But indigenous and frontline and even environmental organizations in my region deem this type of energy production as a false solution because 99% of hydrogen currently is being produced using fossil fuels, and they call this gray hydrogen. But there are other various forms or various colors of production that are also being promoted at this COP28. Blue hydrogen is using CCS technologies, which would re-equip existing oil and gas infrastructure, aging infrastructure at that, to inject liquid carbon in the ground where these areas have been impacted already by horizontal fracking wells, which is already causing geologic fissures and earthquakes. Pink hydrogen would use nuclear energy without acknowledging the entire nuclear fuel chain from when it's being mined, when it's being milled, transported, to energy generation, and then to waste. And with the conversation and promotion of generation of green hydrogen, 20 to 40% of renewable energy used to generate green hydrogen is lost in the process, meaning that green hydrogen will always be more expensive and less efficient than renewable electricity. And no matter the fuel source, all forms of hydrogen use vast quantities of water, which our drought-stricken region just cannot afford. And lastly, hydrogen is incredibly dangerous. It is the smallest molecule in the world which has a high risk of leakage and is prone to react to metals that cause failures to hydrogen pipelines and steel storage vessels. The combustion of hydrogen produces more harmful nitrogen oxide than burning methane alone, exacerbating health risks to frontline communities, and with such easy leakage comes a wide flammable range in the air, wide explosion range, and embrittlement effects which could be disastrous. Hydrogen hub dreams that are being planned and funded with this type of development at a large scale creates a lot of concern due to the lack of research and technology advancements to create industrial-sized hydrogen production, transportation, storage, and use, let alone an entire global hydrogen economy. So we have real solutions with renewable energies and community-based solutions, and of course, indigenous knowledge and sciences. But we are putting IRA and BIL funding in the wrong places, which is a mechanism to continue fossil fuel economies. Our region is becoming too hot and less water secure to endorse this hydrogen economy. And so we're here to say don't believe in the hydrogen hype and say no to false solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, and appreciate you breaking down that rainbow of hydrogen. It's always very confusing to figure out what color and what does it mean, but it's dangerous no matter the color, and that's what really matters. Lastly, I'm going to hand over to you, Suparna, to bring it home for us, setting the scene and reminding us all why what's happening here matters most, and breaking down some more of these false solutions. Over to you, Suparna.
Thanks, Rachel. I must be very frank to you at the beginning because what I'm going to speak about in the next few minutes, which is called nature-based solutions, or NBS, till today I don't understand what you mean by nature-based solutions. What is that because it doesn't connect to me or connect to many of you, because nature-based solutions is being told by whom? The big polluters, the destructors, who have themselves destroyed the nature, and they are now talking of nature-based solutions. Can you beat it? No. So when this nature-based solutions, NBS, came into the United Nations fora, mainly in the Convention on Biological Diversity and the UN Environment Assembly, we tried to push back, saying that there is no agreed definition of NBS, and neither has its place in none of the global agreements. So just before the CBD COP and last year, so the United Nations Environment Assembly managed to raise that and impose a kind of a definition supported by some of the parties, which I still don't understand what that means. And if you can read through the UNIA General Assembly Resolution 5.5, what happened is that in the CBD negotiations on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, it got a legitimate place. Though we did had huge pushbacks on it, but then they could place that in the text, and they starting comparing nature-based solutions with ecosystems approach, saying NBS and or both NBS and ecosystems approach at the same footing. So now you look into what are the nature-based solutions that they are referring to. I looked at, and I only found in the websites of Shell, BP, Total, that what their nature-based package solution means is monoculture tree plantations and offsets, carbon offsets. So Shell has a $100 million package on NBS, and Total Energy got 10 million hectares in Republic of Congo that's saying we will plant trees. So these are the kind of nature-based solutions that we kind of found out. But still, the UNIA, and you know why, because UNIA is now being headed by someone who was a former lead of UNEP, IUCN, and IUCN is actually the source of this term nature-based solutions. So now we also hear some of our friends saying that there could be good NBS, there could be bad NBS. That's much more confusing. So okay, we say bad NBS are offsets, false solutions, plantations. What could be good offsets? They give you even agroeconomical practices, agroforestry practices are under the nature-based solutions. Watershed protection are under that. You can have the protected areas under the nature-based solutions. I said yes. But why? Because the moment you turn this into carbon offsets and biodiversity offsets, they are worse. So they don't remain solutions because you are using protected areas as a biodiversity offset to destruct the nature somewhere else. You are using watershed conservation to destroy biodiversity somewhere else, and this is not nature-based solutions. Simple. So nature-based solutions cannot be climate actions at any point of time, real climate actions. Rather, in this COP, within the walls of the COP, in the corridor, we should shout out one thing: our nature is not your solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Suparna, for bringing it home for us, and for all of our amazing speakers for everything you shared with us and for taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise. We have just a few minutes left, but want to check and see if there are any press in the room who have questions for our speakers before we close. If so, please raise your hand so that someone can bring a microphone. And if not, our speakers will be available outside afterwards if you'd like to speak with them more. Before we close, I'd just like to take us back to where we began. The past 30 minutes have been a journey and somewhat of a daunting one, I think it's fair to say. But we started these 30 minutes talking about what's at stake here, and that's many, many lives. And this COP can help protect them or condemn them. We have what we need, as we've heard from our speakers, all the real solutions, the proven solutions, the community-led solutions we need to address the climate crisis justly and urgently. What we need now is for this COP to deliver real solutions that protect lives, not false solutions that protect profits. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Global Campaign to Demand Climate Justice's press conference. We hope to see you again soon.